Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Everyone's got that one family member who thinks on time means whenever I feel like it. In today's story, we're talking about an aunt and uncle who pushed their luck one too many times and finally got a front row seat to their own consequences. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. After years of being late, they demanded we stop giving them fake times. So we did. For many years, my family used to take regular trips with my extended relatives, uncles, aunts, cousins, the whole chaotic caravan. These were the kinds of outings that required coordination, planning, and at least some semblance of time management. And while everyone else managed to show up within a reasonable window, there was always one consistent wrench in the gears: my aunt, uncle, and their two kids. They were always late. Not 5 minutes late. We're talking anywhere from 30 minutes to a full hour behind schedule, every single time. It didn't matter what the event was: birthday parties, day trips, weddings, or even flights, they were perpetually behind. And while some families might laugh it off, mine, not so much. My parents, especially my dad, are extremely punctual people, and that's no small feat when you're wrangling 4 kids into clean clothes and functioning shoes. The tardiness became a recurring frustration, and after years of missed museum slots, rushed picnics, and having to hold back buses or ferries, a consensus was reached among the other families involved. Aunt and uncle would be told an earlier time than the actual one. If something started at 11 a.m., they were told 10. If we planned to leave at 9, they got 8. It worked surprisingly well for a while. Eventually, Aunt and Uncle caught on. Someone must have slipped, or maybe they finally noticed they were the first ones arriving for once. Whatever tipped them off, they weren't pleased. Instead of recognizing the obvious, they were consistently the last to show up. They doubled down on indignation. They confronted my parents, saying something along the lines of, "Give us the correct time from now on, and you'll see it's not us who's the problem." Now, my mom's a patient woman, but she's also a firm believer in natural consequences. So she agreed, no more creative scheduling. They get the real time just like everyone else. The universe must have been waiting for this moment. The very next outing we had planned was one of the biggest of the year, the annual ferry trip across the sea to the UK. Back in the early 90s, these were known locally as booze cruises. You'd hop on the ferry, head to Britain, load up on duty-free alcohol, sweets, and novelty items you couldn't get at home, then return that same day. For the kids, my siblings and I included, it was less about cheap wine and more about raiding the pick and mix at Woolworths and wandering the upper decks of the ferry pretending we were in Titanic. Well, the fun parts of Titanic. The trip had to be on time. Ferries, as you may know, do not wait for tardy relatives. Boarding closed well before departure, and once that ramp went up, that was it. There was no begging or bribing a ferry captain to turn the ship around because your cousins overslept. So naturally, my parents gave them the correct time, be at the terminal by 8 a.m. sharp. We arrived a little early, got everyone checked in, had a few laughs, and watched the cars and foot passengers file in. 8 o'clock came, the ferry sounded its horn. The ramp lifted, the ship pulled away. At around 8:30, a familiar car came flying into the parking lot. Out tumbled my aunt, uncle, and cousins, panic on their faces as they rushed to the now empty dock. But it was too late. All they could do was stand there and watch the ferry shrink into the distance. A literal embodiment of what punctuality looks like. We felt a little bad. Only a little. Mostly we were relieved not to have had to rush or hold the ferry because of someone else, and true to their word, we never lied to them about times again. But also true to form, they didn't become any more punctual. From that day forward, if they were late, we simply didn't wait. We left on time. No drama, no debate. To add a bit of family flair, every time we saw them for months afterward, my dad would grin, wave cheerfully, and say, "Ferry, nice to see you." The rest of us would collapse into laughter, while my aunt would mutter something about traffic or broken alarms. Some lessons sink in. Others sail away and never come back.
Sorry about the voice change. It will be back in a second. I just wanted to say a quick word about our sponsor, Women Within.
Bougie on a budget for less than $20. $19.99. This dress is $19.99. You guys, I'm obsessed. I've been waiting for this dress to come in the mail, and now I want to order like 4 more. This is the Navy Pretty Blossom. Isn't that gorgeous? 21 buttons down the front, and it has pockets. Spring's coming up, summer's coming up, and these colors are so vibrant for both. Seriously, you guys need to get this dress from Woman Within. I'm buying one for all of my friends. Go and check these dresses out today.
You heard the women. Go to womenwithin.com and use code RedWheel for 20% off at checkout.
And our second story. Rich client refused to pay for her website. Here's a story from about 12 years ago. At university, I designed websites to make some extra cash and pay for tuition, /rent, etc. I got pretty good at it and had a great network of clients around London, UK. One day, I was introduced to a lady, we'll call her Debbie, who ran an interior design agency in West London. Speech marked there because all of her clients were her friends or friends of her husband. She was extremely wealthy, lived in a house on one of the most expensive streets in London, and had a chauffeur on call. All of her money derived from her husband, who seemed very sketchy. She also had these 2 sons who just sat around the house all day drinking beer, despite being in their late 20s. Anyway, I designed a website for her, which she was very pleased with. Her exact brief was, I want this website to show the best interior design service in London. I quoted the price, she agreed, and I built it. But then when it came time to pay, she suddenly started complaining that the website wasn't quite right. Despite being live and generating lots more traffic than before, she refused to pay and stopped answering my calls. What she didn't realize was that I owned the domain name and could legally do whatever I wanted with it. So I redirected it to her closest competitor, a nearby interior design agency run by a rival of hers she hated. Within 6 hours, I got a phone call from her going ballistic that her website was broken and that it had to be fixed ASAP. I explained that I couldn't really do anything, but vaguely suggested that if she stumped up some cash, then maybe I could do something. I won't repeat the name she called me, but the next morning my account was credited with the money. I never bothered to change the domain back and blocked her number after that. The site's still live to this day.
Hey, just wanted to let you guys know that I wanted to give a shout out to my good friend, the Boiled One. He will be featured in new episodes, so stay tuned.
And our last story. Entitled Karen tried to steal my dad's inheritance. In my country, if you own land, you can't do whatever you want with it when your spouse dies. If you have direct heirs, i.e. children, let's say you and your spouse own a large piece of land, you have 3 children together, your spouse dies and you want to sell the property. Before you can do that, you have to give your children their share of the inheritance from their deceased parent. It has to be at a fair price, i.e. market value. Once you've paid them out, you can do whatever you want with the property. If you haven't or aren't capable of doing so, you can't sell. Now to the story. My paternal grandma and her 2 sisters owned a cabin together. When this took place in 2006, the oldest sister had already passed away and her share was inherited by her children, my dad's cousins. They're not important to the story. This story is about my grandma, my dad, and my grandma's younger sister, Karen. Karen was the baby of the family, the golden child. She was superficially charming, had married up, and was very used to getting her way. I don't think she was ever told no. Karen loved the cabin and spent most weekends there. My dad's cousins were not interested in selling their share of the property, but Karen had been wanting Grandma's share for years. My grandma and dad spent very little time there, but Grandma paid her share for all repairs on the property. Another thing about my grandma was that she never dealt with money of any kind. Grandpa took care of everything related to property, taxes, etc. He died a few years before this took place, and my dad had to take on everything related to this, as Grandma was too anxious to deal with it. She never paid Dad as part of the inheritance from Grandpa. Karen was well aware of this. In addition, Grandma had been battling cancer for a number of years at this point. It wasn't super aggressive, and she was given medications that allowed her to be comfortable. She wasn't about to drop dead any minute, but she was reduced physically and very anxious. In the winter of 2006, Karen paid Grandma a visit. She stayed overnight, something she never did. A few days later, Dad called Grandma for a chat. Grandma mentioned that Karen had been there and that they'd reached an agreement about the cabin. That Karen had brought some papers for Grandma to sign. My dad immediately knew something was amiss. What papers? It wasn't the deed, was it? Well, yes, Grandma confirmed. She told Dad that Karen had come to see her, that she wanted to buy her share of the cabin, and that she had brought the deed already. It just needed Grandma's signature. She said Karen had asked her for a price, and Grandma, who knew nothing about money and the actual worth of anything, suggested $3,000. I think. It's a different currency, but that's roughly the sum in today's money. Dad was livid. First, that's nowhere close to the actual value of the property, and second, the way Karen went about it, she basically ambushed Grandma with the deed, staying overnight to make sure she kept complete control of the situation so Grandma couldn't call Dad to discuss it with him. Dad was not opposed to the idea of selling Grandma's share to Karen, but it would have to be at market price. Karen knew this. Dad immediately called Karen, told her this was unacceptable and that he was going to contest the sale. Karen just told him that this was what Grandma wanted, that she set the price herself, and that Karen had done nothing wrong. Dad got a lawyer ASAP, and so did Karen. They went back and forth the entire spring and summer. Dad refused to relent. Karen kept proclaiming her right. Grandma was distraught. To her, a feud within the family was the worst that could ever happen. She begged Dad to let it go. Dad refused. This was his inheritance. At the very beginning of 2007, it finally went to trial. The trial only lasted a couple of hours. According to my parents, the judge threw the book at Karen. The sale was a blatant violation of our country's inheritance laws and was ruled null and void. The ownership was transferred back to Grandma. My mom later told me that Karen walked into the courtroom all cocky and self-assured, there to claim her right. As the judge kept going through the documentation, he kept asking questions. Her demeanor became more and more defeated. At the end, she just hung her head. A week after the trial, Grandma passed away. Karen did not attend the funeral. Before all this, Karen and Dad got along really well. After, they never spoke again. After Grandma died, Dad wanted to sell his share of the cabin, but he would never sell to Karen, ever. That was forever off the table. He approached his cousins, explained the entire ugly situation, and proposed they buy his share. Thankfully, they were interested and bought him out at a fair price. After her defeat in court and the death of the sister she tried to scam, Karen spent very little time at the cabin. For the first time in her life, she'd been told a firm no. This was something she'd really wanted, and for the first time, it didn't go her way. Family feuds can break a heart, but it was the right thing to do, what your dad did, in my opinion. That sister wasn't a good person. Seems like the consequences she eventually faced were very needed. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.